Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Mobile App Academy, where we show you how to build and configure mobile apps live on the Now platform. My name, as always, is Charlie Steiner, product marketer here on the mobile team at ServiceNow. And today we'll be walking you through a new feature that was recently released in actionable push notifications for your mobile device. If you're joining us for the first time, I want to welcome you to our Mobile App Academy series. And this is a live building series that focuses on managing and building out mobile apps in real time. We have product experts on hand to provide guidance, best practices, and answer any of your questions in the chat window. We host these Mobile App Academy sessions every 2 weeks here on Zoom at 10 a.m. Pacific. And you can find our recordings on Thursday mornings on our YouTube playlist, which will be linked in the chat shortly. As always, before we dive into our amazing session we have prepared for you all today, I just want to point out a few great resources you can find on our community page, which will also be linked in the chat shortly. So if you're new to mobile, we definitely recommend you start here in our community page with our self-enablement resources like our guidebooks and white papers. We also have a plethora of other resources like labs and training on Now Learning, as well as our YouTube playlist with our previous sessions, where you can find sessions like deploying Now Mobile, how to get started with mobile card builder and user experience analytics, as well as our most recent session from 2 weeks ago, which centered around configuring deep linking, a feature that was released in Quebec. And one more thing to note is if you like this session, we do have many others hosted by our sister teams across ServiceNow. So there is one for virtual agent, which is great, as well as HR and performance analytics and reporting, and Platform Foundation, which is more of a developer, now platform focused session. So if you're interested in any of those, do please check them out. Let them know you came from us. Have a good time. And you can find them by navigating to the forum tab on Now Community and going to the respective forums where they'll be linked on their homepage. And one more final thing to note is if you did miss our webinar last week on what's new in Rome for mobile, we did have a great session, and thank you all for joining, or for those of you who did. And if you didn't get a chance to, it is now available on demand on ServiceNow.com via our webinar portal, so you can check it out there, or I'll be linking this in the chat shortly as well. With all that said, let's get started with today's session, and I'll pass it over to David Ha to take it away.
Thanks for the intro, Charlie. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Mobile App Academy. My name is David Ha, and I'll be your host for today. And as always, I also have Fu Ho with me, who's a solution architect on the mobile team here at ServiceNow. And we want to give a warm welcome to everyone joining us live. For today's topic, we're going to show you how you can configure an actionable push notification from scratch on your Now mobile app so that your employees can take actions quicker without even opening up their apps. In the most recent session, we showed you how you can build a basic mobile push notification, but now we're going to take one step further and make it actionable from your notification screens. These are just some of the posts and questions that we found around mobile community asking about actionable push. Seems there's some folks that are struggling with this, so hopefully you can use this academy to address all your questions and concerns. For today's schedule, this will be about a 30-minute session. We'll start off with a quick 5-minute overview. I want to make sure we're all aligned on what an actionable push is and what you can do there. And then we'll jump into our exercise for today. We'll deep dive on how you can build one from scratch. And then also we'll show you some common troubleshooting tips and tricks along the way. And then we'll open up to some Q&A afterwards. Okay. For the folks who are still new to Now Mobile, I recommend that you check out our introduction sessions on how to get started with your Now Mobile implementations or want to learn anything around mobile platform. If you're still trying to learn basics like how to configure my requests, how to customize your applet launchers, create actions, or even create a basic mobile push notification, then I highly recommend that you check out our past sessions, which these topics have already been covered. And like Charlie said, we've uploaded these recordings on mobile community, as well as the YouTube playlist. So definitely check those out if you haven't already. But with all of that said, let's go ahead and dive into the overview. So actionable push notifications. As Charlie mentioned, this was a new feature that we released in the Paris release. And this allowed users to perform push notification actions without even having to open up your app. It supports up to 3 buttons at a time, and it can support global write-back actions, navigations that take you to another screen or another app launcher. You can quickly open up a URL, or you can even open up a virtual agent, any chat. It's really up to you how you want to deep link your users, if you want to take them inside of the app, or if you just want to quickly execute actions in the background without even having to jump into that app. That's possible too. You could do things like, for example, accept or reject an approval from that notification screen. You can use it to check into a meeting or even check into an office as you return to work, right? And to be able to build this actionable push, there's essentially 5 main steps to configure one. And the first step is really what sets an actionable push apart from being a regular standard push notification. And in the first step, we're going to be using this new table to build a mobile push notification record that controls the UI of your actionable push. It determines how many buttons there's going to be, and then it maps those buttons to the functions that you want. And in the remainder of the steps, it's pretty much the same as building a standard push notification, right? We covered that in the past video. Step 2 is you create the push notification message, which is the message that gets displayed in the notification when it's triggered. And then step 3, right? You create the push notification event, which determines what gets sent, when it gets sent, and who it gets sent to. And then lastly, you register your push so that it shows up on your user's device. So with all that said, let's go ahead and jump into the exercise for today. We're going to create an actionable push notification for our out-of-the-box Now Mobile app. It's an actionable push that will allow your employees to quickly accept or reject their approvals from the My Request applet. As a logged in employee, anytime that there's a new approval for me to review, it will notify that user via push, and then that user will have the option to quickly approve or reject directly from their notification screen. Okay, so to get started, we're going to jump into our instance and start building this. And just to quickly review the steps, right? We're going to cover this first step is we're going to use this new table for mobile push notification to build the UI of our push actions. So let me go and share my screen now. So to get started, we're going to first build a push notification. So on our left-hand nav, if you look up push, you're going to see push notifications under System Mobile. Let me zoom in a little bit. And then if you scroll down, there's the standard push notification events under System Notification. Step 1 is actually building this push notification under System Mobile. You'll notice that there are 2 completely different tables. This one's called SysSG Push. This is the one that we want in step 1. And then this under System Notification, although they do have the same names on the left-hand nav, there are 2 completely different tables. We will still be using this to build our event, but I just want to call that out in case you ever get mixed up. So let's first create the UI of our push actions. We're going to open up this new push notification table, and we're going to create a new record. Okay, it's going to ask for a name. We can name this, how about approvals, approval actionable push. Okay, and it's going to be actionable, so we'll set that to true. And then for the categories, let's click on the search bar, and you're going to see various options. All of these are pretty much built out of the box. There should be about 12 different categories. And if you're curious what it does, if you go to our product docs for actionable push and then scroll down to push action categories, you can see which one, what is the description for each one of these actions. What we're looking for is the ability to be able to accept and reject. And so we'll likely use this one. You can see that there's one for accept reject back and then accept reject for. This just means background and this means foreground. So for background, when you execute the action, the action will just complete without having the user jump into the app. But if you set it to foreground, this will actually send the user into the app, and then it'll take it to the screen that you want them to open up as well. Okay, and we're actually going to use this one. Just make sure that when we click on that accept approval, that it works. We'll get the success message, and then it'll take us to the screen so that we can confirm that as well. Okay, and then there's other actions if you want to explore them as well. Okay, so what we want is accept reject for. So let's do accept reject for. Let's make sure this is the right one. Nope. And you're going to see that, if you install other business unit apps, such as ITSM mobile agent or field service agent, they might build their own custom categories, but I recommend just using the ones that are on global, and they should match, verbatim. So I don't want ITSM, so I want the global one, which is going to be the one below that. Global. Okay, so perfect. And then it's going to ask what screen you want to take your users into. Okay, so when I go into my task, these are all of the different records that I need to approve. I want to be able to approve requests. So if I open up this record for request 27, I want to take them into this screen here. And this screen that we're looking at is called approve request. And this is a form screen, right? This form screen has your details and your activity stream. I want to take them here when the user has to approve or reject. So I know that the screen is called approve request. So we'll look up approve request. It's going to be this top one here. If I check this out, it is for request approvals, and this should be the correct one. So I have what I need, and let's go and submit this record. Okay, so we're not quite done with this yet, right? Let's now open up this push notification record. And now what we want to do is we want to define the action that we want the users to be able to execute. It's the accept action and the reject action. Thankfully, out of the box, the Now Mobile app already has these actions for me to use. And so I'm just going to take this approve and reject and then map it to the buttons on my actionable push. Okay. And I can do that using this related table here called push action instances. So I'm going to create a new record here. And it's going to ask for the push action. And so if I look up using this list, I'm going to see various different types. And in the product docs, it should also explain all the different types here as well. But the one that I'm going to want is, let's create the one for accept. This looks right. And then it asks for a button. So this button is just your function, right? And we want the approve request function. So I'm going to select the approve request function just to confirm that I have the right one. This generally looks right to me. I'm seeing that it's pulling from the Now Mobile scope. It is approve a rec. But I can also confirm this as well, right? So let's duplicate this tab. I'm going to open up a new tab, and I'm going to use Platform UI to navigate to this screen to make sure that I am pulling the right actions. So let's look up applet. We're going to search up approve request. I know that this is a form screen and this lives in the Now Mobile scope. So field service is off the table. Here's Now Mobile, Now Mobile. I have two form screens, but one is for rhythms and one is for request. So I know that this is the right one. So let's open this up. And then I know that these functions live on my detail screen, right? Forms can have multiple segments. I have one segment for details, one segment for activity stream. I want to jump into the details. And in these details, if you click on function instances belonging to screen, function instances just means action location, right? Button location. And I know that there's buttons here on this screen. And here is my approve request and reject request. So if I open up this record, I can jump into the function, right? So we'll jump to the correct scope. This defines the location of your function, right? Your function instance, but we want the function itself. And now here's my function. So I just need to make sure that this is the right one. So I'm mapping my accept to my function. And I think it looks good. It's Now Mobile and it looks right. Okay, so we can go ahead and submit now. Okay. So if we go back into our push notification record, we now have one button that will display on my notification screen. If you look here, I built these previously, but just to give you an idea of what's happening, if I hold on to one of these notifications, I should be able to see now the accept button. Okay. Now we need to just create the reject button. So let's create another push action instance. And this push action is going to be reject. I want to make sure that I have the right one. And again, you might see multiple just because there's other scoped applications or other out-of-the-box apps that you've installed, and those business units have built their own. But I recommend sticking to the product docs and use the global ones. Okay. So the function that we want is called reject request. And I already tested this previously, so I know that this is the correct one. It's from Now Mobile, and this is reject request. So let's go and submit this. Okay. So this was step one. I've created my mobile push notification record. I've made it actionable. I've set my categories that I want. It's going to be an accept and reject that happens in the foreground. The foreground just means that it'll take the user into the app as well when I click on the action. And then I've mapped the buttons that I want to the functions that I want. There's going to be two buttons that show up like this. Okay, so that completes step one. Step two, now we're starting to build like the standard push notification. It's this exact same steps as you would build a regular push. We're now going to create a push message content. And we've actually made it convenient and very easy for you to do this by clicking on this related link. When you click on create push message content here, what's really nice about this is it's going to automatically generate a JSON payload for you. And it's also going to pull in the correct sys ID. So when you build regular push notifications, usually you have to define, the client, you have to define the sys ID and all that stuff. But with Actionable push, this is done automatically for you. So it kind of saves you that step. Okay. So all I have to do here is just name it. I'm going to call it approval actionable push. The push app, we want this to trigger on the Now Mobile app. And I know that from product docs, ServiceNow request application is Now Mobile. Don't get it confused with mobile, although it would make sense that mobile means Now Mobile, but this actually represents the agent client. Okay, what we want is the request. So just remember, request means requester. Requester is for Now Mobile. Okay, and I'm pretty much done here. If I go and click submit here, I'm going to go back. Let's open up my push message content to see the record that I created. I called it approval. This first one right here. I want to confirm that they pulled in the correct sys ID. So if I copy this into my notes and paste this is the sys ID, right? Let's go back into the push notification record that I created earlier. And if I pull the sys ID of this, it should match. Okay, so this is just to show you that, this is automatically creating that JSON payload for you, and it is correctly mapping the sys ID. Okay, so now step two is complete. Step three is now we just have to create the actual push notification events. It's how the message is sent, who it gets sent to, and how it gets triggered, right? So now if we go to our left-hand nav and scroll down to system notifications, there's going to be this table called push notification for events. And I'm going to want to create a new record here. Okay. And this is just your standard push, so I'll speed through this. Let's name this approval actionable push. The table, it's going to be pulling from the approval table. sys approval, approval approver. I don't have to set the category. I'll leave it categorized. What's important here is for the when to send. I want it to be sent anytime the request is inserted and updated. And the conditions I want is, let's see, which conditions should I set? Let's do when state changes to requested, and then the task type is request. Okay, so let's do state is changes to requested, right? So anytime an approval needs to be completed, the state gets changed to requested. And then we'll add an additional query that to make sure that this applies specifically to request types. And what we're looking for is approver for task type. So I'm gonna have to actually dot walk into this. If you scroll down, if you click on show related fields, this is kind of finicky. I'll then click into approval for arrow to task fields. And then I'm gonna go into task type. I need to click on task type. Should be right here. So here's the interesting thing. Once I click this, it then pops up approval for task type for me. This doesn't show until you actually click on those three things. So that's just something I found interesting on the platform. So this is the condition I want, and I want this to be is request. These are all your different type of approvals. I want request, which is this one. Okay, and this could be for rhythms, this could be for instance, anything on this approval table. Okay, so now I'm pretty much done with the conditions. I've now set the when to send. Now who will receive, right? You can define it. You could trigger it to different groups, to specific users, really up to you. But for this purpose, I'm just gonna trigger this to my logged in user, okay? And then for the what it will contain, the most important thing here is just the push message. When you're building mobile push notifications, this is the most important piece. The rest of this is for actually for platform and email pushes, which you could build both at the same time. But I just want the mobile push. So I'm going to create a new push message record. It's going to pull up this pop-up. I'm going to create new. And I'm going to name this approval actionable push. The push app is going to ask, which client you want. And again, the request application is the Now Mobile. Push message content, and this is what we created earlier, right? It's the JSON that got automatically filled in for us. So we call that approval actionable push. The table is going to be the same table. It's pulling from approvals. And then now this is the record, the table that we define our message. So what do you want that message to display when this notification is triggered, right? So I just wanted to say approval requested for this logged in user, or sorry, our message is going to say approval requested for this approval number, okay, or the request number. And this is going to be dynamic, so it's for whatever request that gets sent and triggered. Okay, so let's go ahead and submit this record now. And I pretty much have everything that I need on this push notification event. I've defined my when to send, how it gets triggered. These are my conditions. My logged in user will receive it anytime it fulfills those conditions. And then I've defined what that message should be. Okay. So let's go ahead and submit now. And now the very last step is just to register that push to the client that I want. So if I scroll down to push applications, this is my final step. What I'm looking for here is which client do I want to put this push on? And we're looking for request. So, you have your different clients with, the BlackBerry MAM wrapping or Intune wrapping, but we don't want those. We just want the generic public app, which is going to be this one, ServiceNow request application. Okay. And these probably won't show up unless you actually use these clients. You might just see a couple push applications here, but since I have all the clients on my instance, I'm seeing many more. So let's open this up. We want this related list called push default registration. And if this is your first time building a push notification, this won't automatically show up on your instance. What you're going to need to do is go into configure related list and actually pull this out. So it's called push default registration to push applications. That's the related list that you want to expose. Okay, so let's go back. And on this related list, we're just going to define the push that we want to show on this client, which is called approval actionable push. Okay, so let's submit that. And now we've pretty much completed building our actionable push. Some troubleshooting tips. If I were to try to trigger this push right now, it's unlikely to work. And the reason for that is because to be able to refresh and update these changes to your users, that user will actually have to log out and log back in. And this is for any new push notification and update. Unfortunately, refreshing changes on pushes is quite difficult, and that log out and log back in is necessary. Okay. And just to make sure this really works, I'm going to hard close this as well. Okay. So let's now log back in to my Quebec instance. I'm going to log in with my credentials. Okay. And now I'm going to try to trigger this push. I'm going to go and look for a request type. Let's use request 27. And then to trigger this, I just need to change the state. Let's just approve this. And then we're going to change it back to request because we set the condition as anytime a request approval, when the state changes back to requested, the logged in user should receive this push. Okay. And I can confirm this by looking at my push system logs. I want to make sure that this was triggered. We'll give it a few seconds. Okay, so it's now pending. So this is a good indication for me to know that this works. The reason why you're seeing two is because we actually have two logged in users into this device, both logged in as this user. Fu is also logged in on his device. And so that's the only reason why you're seeing two. So we'll just give it a quick second. It should trigger. But this is actually a really good sign that your push works. So now we just got to make sure the buttons are showing. Okay. The reason why the push didn't show up is because I'm on Do Not Disturb at the moment. But if you look at my notifications, we did receive one. So if I were to hold on to this, I can now see those two buttons that are created. One for accept. Let's accept this. What the expected behavior is when I set this, it'll take me into the app. It'll show a success message that the approval has been accepted. It'll take me to that screen for that record as well. So let's tap on it. And there it is. Action was successful. Although it didn't take me to the correct screen. That's interesting. Okay. Let's double check to make sure that first, let's just make sure that the approval was accepted. So we'll go to my task and it's off my list. So it is completed. We'll just check one thing. It should have navigated me to the screen as well. Let's see. If I go back to push, this is the screen that I wanted. Approve request. Maybe this is the wrong form screen. Form screen. Approve request. No, it should be right. Okay. It's in the foreground too. Okay. Let's try this one more time too, and we'll try it with the reject as well. I forgot one step. So, and it's a really important step as well. When you're building out your buttons and mapping them to your actions, your functions, parameters are going to be really important because some actions are going to have parameters. Let me give you an example. If I open up a new tab with this function for a reject request, you're going to see that there is a UI parameter for reject reason. And this is basically, for the end user to manually type in what is that reject reason. That is that parameter that is associated to this function. For this reject to work, you need to map your parameters to this reject button. So if I open up this record, there's going to be a related list for push parameter values. I need to make sure that that UI parameter is mapped in as well. Okay, it doesn't get done automatically, and this is the parameter that I want. Okay, it is the reject reason parameter. Okay, and then we'll submit that. So now my reject should work. The reason why my approved worked is because if you go to my approve action, you'll notice that there's actually no parameters on this, right? It's just a simple button that approves that request. There's no additional fields that you want the end user to fill in. And something to point out too is for actionable push, we only support actions that have one parameter at this moment. That is the current, that is what is supported for actionable push as of today, okay? So now that I've mapped my parameters to the reject, let's test to make sure it works. Let's trigger another request to my user. Let's look up request. And then we'll open up request number 26. We'll change the state back to requested. And then we'll change this to approved real fast. And then just to trigger this, this will get set back to requested. Okay. And then to make sure that this was triggered, we're going to look at push notification logs. And I see another pending. Okay. So we'll give it a second to trigger. I'm currently on do not disturb, so I might not see it at the top, but we should see a little alert come in. Oh, and there it is. Okay, so now if I were to hold on to this and then clicked on reject, it's going to ask for the reject reason. And this is my parameter that I brought in, right? So now I can type in the reject reason. Let's say is meet budget, click send, and then action was successful. Okay, so both our buttons work. And that pretty much wraps up what I want to show. I'm not quite sure why it's not going to the screen. Fu, do you remember when we tested yesterday if it navigated to the screen when we executed it?
I think so. You had on your push content message content. Remember that sysid that you had? It's calling the correct function, right? And after it called that function, it should go to that form screen.
Mhm.
We can take a look at your old one.
Yeah, we can take a look at the old one. So what we can do is we can enable the old one real fast. We called it test. We'll set the one that we created to false for now. Let's see. We called it approval. Let's turn this notification off. We'll set active to false. And then let's use our backup, which we call test. Test push action. Okay. And then we'll set this back on. And then update. And now if I log out and log back in, it should register to my device. So let's log out. I just want to be able to show that you can navigate to that screen when you execute the action. Should be possible. Okay. Admin. Okay. Conditions should be the same, so I'll just trigger this request real fast. The request will trigger 27. And we'll change the state to requested. And then just make sure that this was triggered. We'll look at the logs. There it is. Okay. And then we'll give it a second to trigger. Well, it looks like I received it. I showed my notifications. We'll hold on to this. And then let's just quickly accept. So I guess it didn't navigate to the screen. Okay. Maybe this is something that we'll look into further, just to confirm. But we'll follow back up on community if there's any news that we find or discover. But that pretty much wraps up our actionable push. You can see that users can quickly accept and reject their approvals. It's really for actions that needs to be done on the go, that needs to be executed really quickly. And maybe they're just like common actions that you just need to get out of the way in the morning, or something that just needs to be done really fast. Is there any questions that we want to highlight in the chat feed?
There are no number of questions, but I want to highlight what you said early in the beginning. You notice that you did push notification, and you notice that there's two of them. Can you go over what those two mean? Push notification for sys mobile and push notification for sys notification.
Oh, yes. So really important here. So this sys push notification, you'll see that this is called sys SG push notification. And this was built specifically for actionable push. And specifically what this table does is that it defines the UI on your actionable push here, right? This determines how many buttons do you want when the user receives it, and then make sure that you map those buttons to the function that you have, okay? That's what this table does. If you go down to system notification and open up this one, which does have the same name, this is called system email action list. This was the push notification events that the platform built. This controls email notifications, but also controls mobile notifications. This determines how the notification is triggered, and when triggered, who it gets sent to, and then when it's sent, what is the message that you want to show to that user, right? So two completely different uses for these two records. I just wish that they named it a bit better. Unfortunately, they do have the same name, but to differentiate, just know that system mobile push notifications, these are for your actionable push only. This is the step one that we did. If you don't want to use actionable push and just want to build a regular standard notification, this won't matter. This you won't even need to touch this. Okay, this is specifically for actionable push. Hope that makes sense.
Perfect. Yeah, just want to iterate. So the push notification at the system notification is where the trigger is happening. So this is where David had the conditions. That applies to all push notifications. So always remember that the sysmobile push notification is for UI, and then the sys notification push notification is for how it's getting triggered, who is getting sent to, and then what that content shows. And that's where David is highlighting right now, the push message. So that's like the old configuration since Madrid. But the one that David did was the push notification in sysmobile is for the new UI stuff. So just want to clear that up. I know it's a little confusing, but thanks for explaining that, David.
Yep. It looks like there's a question that asks, if this works for both mobile and agent, and yes, right. You would just define, when we built the content message, push message content, it asks which push app you want this to be sent to, right? So you would just change this to mobile, and then this should get triggered to your agent app, right? And then also when he created the actionable push, right? It also asks you for the screen, and this is probably going to be a screen that pulls from your ServiceNow agent client. And then when you register the device for push applications, you're going to open up the agent client, which is called mobile. It's going to be this one. Yeah, mobile, right? And then you would register it here. And that's how you define whether it gets triggered on agent. Any other questions from chat, dude?
There are a number of questions, but they're more related to like security and stuff. There's nothing related for push. I don't see.
We have a question from Jacob that asks, so there's no way to have it to both. It will require a push setup for each device type. Not for each device type, but for each client, yes. So if you have a push that's for now mobile and you have a push for agent, you're gonna have to create two. Hopefully that clarifies. Yep, for each client, correct. Okay.
Yep.
If no other questions, then we can quickly wrap up. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And if you found this session helpful, please let us know in our post-session survey. There's also going to be a couple questions that ask you what topics you want us to explore in the future. We really love getting feedback from all of you. We wouldn't have hosted this session unless you guys had told us that advanced push notifications was something that you wanted to learn more about. So keep letting us know in the survey what you want to learn about. We'll definitely cover them in the future. And if you're interested in any of our past mobile app academies, we do record these and then upload them to YouTube, which Charlie has already sent in the chat. So make sure to subscribe to our mobile community forum, register to our mobile app academy series, and then you'll get notifications on our latest updates and topics. With all of that said, thank you all for joining us today, and we hope to see you again in 2 weeks. Cheers, everyone.